Hey ladies and gents, welcome back to another video. My name is Kukuletu, the owner of talkinmusic.com, and today I'll be showing you how to mix drums like a pro. So before I get started, I have to mention that I've already written a blog post that will go deeper into detail about how to mix drums. As you can see, this is the complete guide to mixing drums. It has everything that you'll need to mix drums. So I'll recommend that you check out the blog post after you've watched the video so that you can get more explanations and audio examples of the before and after in good quality, because obviously YouTube will mess up the quality. So make sure that you check out the blog post so that you can be able to hear the difference between the before and after in HD. So if you want to go to the blog post, go to talkinmusic.com/mixing drums. That's talkinmusic.com/mixing drums. Make sure that you check out the blog post so that you can get an in-depth explanation of what I'll be explaining here. Think of this of more of an overview of the entire blog post. So make sure that you check out the blog post. When it comes to mixing drums, the first thing that you need to do is to group all your drum instruments into a drum pass channel. That way you get to treat the entire drum kit as one. You have to stop thinking about the drum as kick, snare, toms, hi-hat, etc. because it's just one musician playing one instrument. If you think of it like that, then you'll be able to mix drums even better because you'll treat them as one instrument instead of different sounds. So let's get started then. We'll start with the drum pass. For the drum pass, I have a compressor, EQ, and a tape emulation plugin. The compressor is just there to glue the entire drum mix, and then the EQ is used to add some brightness, remove muddy frequencies, and add some weight in the bottom end. And then the tape emulation is there to warm up the drums, to make them sound warmer and add character to them so that they don't sound too digital or too clean. So this is the drum pass without all the effects in the drum pass channel. As you can hear, they sound dry, they sound muddy, and they are not bright at all. Like they sound dark, too dark. So check them out with all the processing. Only 3 plugins, but the difference is simply day and night. So they're sounding much more better, they're punchy, and they're brighter, which means they will cut through the mix nicely. And then let's move on then. If you want more explanation of what each plugin is doing, then make sure that you check out the blog post, and I explain everything about what the EQ is doing and which frequencies I boosted, which frequencies I did cut, and stuff like that. So make sure that you check out the blog post for all the info. And then once you have the clue for your drums, what you can do now is to process individual channels. For the kick drum, I have a kick in, kick out, and kick sub. That way, I have the entire frequency spectrum covered. But if you have one kick, then you have to determine whether the mix that you're working on, is it kick heavy or is it bass heavy? And then that's how you determine how to EQ and compress your drum sounds. But for now, I have the entire frequency spectrum covered. So in case anything is clashing with the bass, then I'll just lower its volume without affecting the other kicks, which is the benefit of using 3 microphones. Now let's check out the individual sounds one at a time. This is the kick in, with and without. So I'll just keep switching between before and after so that you can be able to hear the difference. The goal for the kick in was to make it punchy and make it more brighter so that I can increase the attack of the kick so that it can cut through the mix. And then let's move on to the kick out. This is the kick out without any processing. Okay, let me solo it. As you can hear, without the processing, it sounds muddy, it's boxy, and it's not bright at all. It sounds too dark. So with all the processing, it sounds much more punchy and it will cut through the mix because I increased the attack of the kick drum. So let's move on to the kicks up then. You'll definitely need a good pair of headphones or a good pair of speakers to be able to hear the sub frequencies. But the difference is not that much, but in the mix, it does make a huge difference. And then just to show you the settings for the kick in, all I did was to add some weight in the bottom end using a low shelf boost and then a high shelf boost at the top end just to bring up the attack of the kick in. And then I used a DBX 160 compressor to bring up the punch of the kick drum and to make it shorter by increasing the transient. And then for the kick out, I used the high shelf to boost the high frequencies. And then to emphasize the attack of the kick, I boosted around 800 hertz. And then I created a cut at 500 hertz just to remove all the boxiness and muddy frequencies. And another boost in the lower frequencies just to bring back the weight of the kick. Same thing with the kick sub. Emphasize the click. I created a low pass filter just because there's nothing above 3 kilohertz on a sub kick. So just in case maybe the sub kick did pick up some mic bleed, I'm making sure that I'm removing that. Same thing with the kick out. I'm boosting the lower frequencies just to add weight in the 30 hertz range. And then removing some muddy frequencies around 500 hertz. And that's it. The compressor for the kicks up and the kick out is to bring up the decay of the kick drums. So I use the medium release time and the fast attack time. And then let's move on to the snare. For the snare, what I wanted to achieve was to add more punch to the snare top and then increase the decay of the snare bottom. Now the snare bottom is what's adding the ringing. And then let's check out the EQ. For the EQ, I created a boost at 8 kilohertz just to bring up the presence of the snare and to make it cut through the mix. And then another boost at around 170 just to add body to the snare. For the snare bottom, what I did was to create a boost at 3 kilohertz just to bring up the presence of the snare drum. And then same thing with the high shelf boost to emphasize the attack of the snare. Let's check out the snare drums before and after. As you can hear, the difference is simply day and night. Without all the effects, the snare will sound too dark and it won't cut through the mix. Same thing with the snare bottom. What I did was to bring up the attack to emphasize the attack of both the snare drums. Then let's move on to the hi-hat. Now, I've already created a tutorial about how to equalize hi-hats. So if you want to check that out, make sure that you check it out on my channel. And it does go in detail about how to EQ the perfect hi-hat. So all I did for the hi-hat was to equalize the hi-hat and then add some compression just to control the hi-hat to make sure that it doesn't poke in the mix during the arrangement. So what I did was to create a high-pass filter, a boost at 8 kilohertz to make it more brighter and to help it shine in the mix. And then I removed some frequencies that will cause ear fatigue. And that's the difference between the before and after. And then let's move on to the tom drums. Now the toms for this project, they are only in the drum fill. So since they are not part of the groove or the rhythm, then what I want to achieve is to make them decay much longer. I want them to ring a little bit longer so that the decay can go longer to introduce the next section of the song. So the goal is to increase the decay using a compressor. That way I have a much longer release just to emphasize the decay. And now let's check out the toms with all the processing. As you can hear, the reverb and the compression does help the toms to decay much longer so that it can be a bit longer to introduce the next section of the song. So let me remove the solo pattern and let you hear what I'm talking about. As you can hear, they are long enough to introduce the next section of the song. And then let's move on then. And then for the overheads, now the overheads, you will process them depending on the purpose of the entire recording of the overheads. In this case, as you can see, I don't have any channels for the crash, ride, or the cymbals. So I have to get all that stuff from the overheads. So that's why I created a boost at 8 kilohertz just to make them a bit brighter so that you can be able to hear the cymbals and the crash and the ride as well. And then a cut at 7 kilohertz to remove all the piercing frequencies that will cause ear fatigue. And then I added some weight in the low end for the kick drum. Now let's check out the, what I also did was to add compression to the overheads. Now I use the fast attack and the fast release so that I can tame out all the loud peaks. I don't want the overheads to overtake the entire drum kit. I just want them to produce the cymbals, hi-hats, and other high frequencies only. Now let's check out the cymbals before and after. As you can hear, the EQ brings up the ride and the other higher frequencies so that they can be more audible in the mix and make them brighter. Now let's move on to the room mics. Now the room mics is where I add reverb because I don't want to use reverb on the actual snare tracks. I want the snare to be more upfront and in your face. Now the problem with reverb is that it tends to push sounds further at the back of the mix. So what I do is to always add reverb on the room mics just to give the kit a sense of space and to add ambience to the entire kit. Obviously, without reverb, it will sound weird and it won't sound natural at all. So that's why I need to add reverb in the room microphones. I wouldn't add reverb to the overheads though, because they will sound washy and they won't sound good at all. So let's check out the room mics with and without the processing. Now, all I did for the room microphones was to add a high shelf at 8 kilohertz and then brought out some piercing frequencies. And what I also did was to create a cut at 2.5 kilohertz just to make sure that the room microphones don't add any harsh frequencies, because I already have the entire drum kit playing, including the overheads. So having the room microphones can add a bit of harshness. So that's why I make sure that I remove any harsh frequencies. As you can see, this is a really big cut. And then just to add weight to the snare, kick drums, and the tom drums, what I do is to add a low shelf boost in the lower frequencies, just to add more weight to the low mids and lower frequencies. And now let's check out the drum kit with and without all the processing. So this is where we started. And this is the entire kit with all the processing. So I'll just keep switching between the before and after so that you guys can be able to hear the difference. Now, as you can hear, the difference is simply day and night. And don't think that there's more volume and stuff like that, because when I EQ, I always gain matched all my equalizers. As you can see, I always decrease the output volume so that I can have a fair comparison of the before and after. So as you can see, I always decrease the volume if I have boosts and stuff like that, just so I can have a fair comparison of the before and after. I don't just increase volume. I make sure that the difference is really benefiting the entire drum kit or the entire mix. So if you want more details about which equalizers I used, which compressors I used, and why I used them, make sure that you check out the complete guide about mixing drums. This is totally a complete guide, and you learn everything and how to mix different sounds and stuff like that. So make sure that you check it out. And to check it out, you can simply go to talkingmusic.com/mixing drums. That's talkingmusic.com/mixing drums. And don't forget that if you want more tutorials about mixing, you can always check out talkingmusic.com/books. That's where you'll find more tutorials about mixing. If you found value in this tutorial, make sure that you smash the like button. Don't forget to subscribe and click the notification bell so that YouTube can notify you every time I upload a new video. As always, take good care. We'll talk again soon. Cheers.